Hey guys, this is Grace and welcome to my channel and welcome to the other process video for my 10 handmade cards, 1 homemade kit, February 2020 version. And I'm sorry, I'm going to give you a heads up. I am sick again. I'm so done with this cold and wintry season, but I'm sick again, so my voice is sounding a little bit rough on the edges. But anyways, we have to get this up, so I'm doing the voiceover. So this is going to be card number 6, and with this one I wanted to use the label die that I had pulled. Initially, I had pulled that specifically for making labels for sentiments, but then I had a bunch of, just scraps, and I decided that I will use the label die to use as much of this scrap paper as I can. So that's what I'm doing here. Now I am working with a yellow pattern paper as my base, and so as you can see, there's some yellow papers, and I'm going to end up not using the yellow side of those papers just because, of course, it will blend easily with the background, and so you will not see that very well. So I'm going to opt out to use the other side, and that's one of the things that I love about double-sided paper, is that if one side doesn't work, you can always turn it around and use the other side, and you know that the other side will still match, especially if you are using that from a collection, because their designs and their colors all work together. And I'm gonna also apologize now if you hear my washing machine. I'm kind of multitasking since most of my kids are at school. I am going to try to get some voiceovers done today. So going back to the layout, or rather to the card, initially I wanted to just do 2 strips of it, but I couldn't figure out, because in my head I wanted to do 2 strips of that label, and then on the top side I was going to create kind of a big hello die cut, or like just a big sentiment. But as I was going through my products, I just felt like I already have the sentiments, although they're smaller, but I already have them on the table, so I'm just going to work with that. And so I ended up going with a white label on the far right side, and then that blue that's kind of subtle, has a subtle pattern, I'm going to put my smaller colored images on there, and that all worked out. So that's why I have a 3rd row of that label, of the label die cuts. And then now I'm going to stamp an image, and I believe I decided to go with You Make Everything Butter because that was so cute. And I'm going to add the mittens, or kitchen gloves, I should say, kitchen gloves on the blue, and I'm also going to add the tray of cupcakes next to it, but then the whisk, I'm going to put that next to the butter. And then, of course, like I said before, I've already pre-stamped and colored all of the images, and I did hand cut them. I didn't have a die for this specific stamp set. I'm sure, well, I'm guessing they have a die set for these kinds of stamp sets out there, but I just decided to hand cut them because my hands still work, and so that's gonna be it. So now that I've created my card base, or rather my card front, I'm going to adhere that to the card base, and I'm going with a white cardstock just because all of the colors of the labels and also the pattern paper background, it's a little bit too busy, so I'm going to go with the white. And then I'm just going to finish this off with some sequins. At first I decided that maybe I could sprinkle them on top of the labels, but again, it just seems like there's just a lot of patterns going on already in the center of this layout, and so I'm going to go and put the sequins just on the top left and on the bottom right. And that will do it for card number 6. Now cards number 7, 8, and 9 are actually going to be created kind of simultaneously. As you can see, I have some pattern paper that I've run through my die cut machine using the nested oval die. So it created these basically frames, and they're in different sizes. So I used 6 pattern papers and then did that, and then my idea is that I will kind of mix match all of the labels that was created, and then I'm going to make a nested label with different pattern papers. And then I'm using some just scrap cardstock, and it doesn't really matter what color it is, because I'm actually going to cut around it, so all you're going to see is the layered ovals on my card. So I'm just kind of figuring out what I like. Again, there were some patterns here that I didn't really care for, like the paw prints or cat prints, and also the ones with the eye. But in my mind, if I use just little snips of it or little pieces of it, that it's at the end of it, people won't really, like, it's not going to be it's not going to draw the eye that much. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping for in this technique that I'm doing. So now that I've created all of my ovals, I'm actually turning my scissors just a little bit on the side, so I'm cutting underneath the oval, so you don't see the pattern, or the cardstock rather, on the bottom. And so again, like I said, these 3 cards are going to be done simultaneously, so I've kind of pre-cut a bunch of them. The pattern paper backgrounds I've cut, and I've also scored the sides of it so that it'll have that stitching effect. And then I've also kind of decided what design I will do, and as you can see, that's how I'm layering all of them. Now some of them I'm kind of mix matching, like if you see that cassette tape, that was a background on the green paper or green card on the right, and then it'll be a strip on the left. And then I've also dyed, is that the right word? I pre-cut using a die the scallop edges that I am going to be adding on the edges of the 2-inch strips that I've created, or that I want to add to my cards. So there was a lot of kind of assembly line style of creating when it came to these cards, and I think this is kind of an efficient way, if you were mass producing cards, is to do it this way. I'm sure you can do different designs, but if you were wanting to create a lot of cards in a small amount of time, I'm a big believer of doing an assembly line, because then it just makes things faster, and also I feel like you use up your supplies a lot better when you do that. And so I'm just cutting out all the strips, and then I'm going to adhere them together, and that's basically how the design will look. Now I'm going to show you how I'm going to do the first one, I think, and then the other ones I'm just, because it's pretty repetitive, I'm just going to do that off camera, and then I will show you what I do to decorate them some more. Now the papers, of course, is 6 by 6, and so when you cut the die, I believe the die will cut like 5.5, I think. So it's, as you can see, it's exactly the way, like it's perfectly aligned with an A2 size card, and so that's why I was very careful on how I trim it, because I wanted to make sure that I do not trim it too much that it will be off for that 5.5 length. So now I'm going to show you the different cards, and as you can see, they have little accents on them, and I did decide to stamp some more of the cupcakes and then color them. So off camera I did all of that, and it didn't take me that long, maybe 10 minutes the most, because again I was just repeating the process. So I was basically stamping, I think I stamped like 9 of them so that I can have 3 little cupcakes for each one, or maybe I can't remember what else I did. Oh no, I had some leftover of the mittens and the whisk, and so I'm adding that as well. And I apologize if this part of the video is blurry. I don't know what happened to my camera. I think it's because my hands were moving, and so it was tracking my hand to capture the focus instead of the items that are on the background. So it was noticing that my hand was in the foreground, and that's what's focusing on more. And then I've also pre-stamped my sentiments, so they're all just kind of ready to go. All I'm doing here is adhering all of the cupcakes and also the sentiments, and I will add a few sequins here and there for each one of them, but basically those are my 3 cards. And so overall, I would say making these 3 cards would probably took me maybe 30 minutes, maybe 30 to 45 minutes for the 3 of them, and I don't think that that's bad, especially when I have 3 layered and colored cards as a finished product. So when you are pressed with time with card making, maybe you could consider doing some, one design kind of in 3 different ways, and then also doing the assembly line type of creating, so that you will be able to get your cards done in a more efficient way. So I hope that you guys are liking these videos, and I hope that this inspires you to pull out some of your stash to create some cards. If you don't think that you can make 10 cards with the items that you have, try 5 and see how that goes. I'm actually considering maybe going down a notch and doing just 5, because 10 does take a lot of time. However, I still like the idea of having 10 cards done every other month, because then at the end of that, if you think about it, at the end of the year, I have 60 cards, right? Because half of 12 months, so I have 60 cards that I can use for different kinds of celebrations and events. So I hope that you guys are liking these videos, and let me know in the description box below if you have any other ideas for card making that I can do as a video. So we're now on to card number 10, and this is my last card, and this is going to be a shaker card. The reason why I decided to do a shaker card was because I have all those sequins, and I felt like if you're going to pull out the sequins, Grace, might as well use them for a shaker card. So that's what I'm doing here. I created the base already, and I did use an oval die to create the opening or the center of the card. And then I've also cut I think that's like maybe a 3x3 or 3.5 by 3.5 inch square of background paper, and that's going to be in between the clear plastic and then the foam that of course I have to use to raise up that particular piece. And then I'm going to put that background, because then otherwise you're going to see the green cardstock, and it's not bad to see the green cardstock, but I just prefer for my recipient to see something else other than the green cardstock base. So remember those frames that was left over, or that I've used for cards 7, 8, and 9. Well, I have some more leftovers of that. So I just used one of them, one larger one, and then use that as a frame to go around the card, just to kind of have or go around the oval opening, just so that it will have a finished look. And that's what I did here. And I just added that with some glue dots, some mini glue dots, and right now I'm just trying to make sure that it's all aligned. Okay, so now that I have that, I have my card base, I have my little background piece. I'm going to add that to the center, and then after that I'm going to work on creating my shaker element. And so I have already cut some fun foam. That's what I've been using right now. Of course, it would be so much easier if you have like the foam scotch tape, because that's what I've used before too, but I am trying to use up what I have. And so I'm just kind of, I'm just using that. And instead of going around the oval, which I knew that it will be such a pain, especially in the corners, I just decided to create an opening that's a rectangle instead of an oval, because even if it goes on the, on the edges, that's totally fine with me. So that's my shaker right there, and I wanted to add a little bit more embellishment on the front and also a sentiment. Now, when I was thinking of a sentiment, I was thinking maybe putting it in the center of that shaker piece or putting it on the bottom. And here I'm additioning a few sentiments that will go on there, and I'm actually going to add my label there and see how that looks, and I'm even going to stamp it. But at the very end, you will see that I will change my mind. So I'm even going to be adhering it. And at first it looks okay, that's fine, it works well. But then the sugar and flour is just didn't look like a matching sentiment, or that it worked well with the sentiment just because it's not a whole cake. It was just cupcakes, and I don't know, I'm just not loving it. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe I should do a strip. But there's no strip that was wide enough for this other one. And I'm just going to kind of rummage. As you can see, I have a lot of mess and trash on the side. And then at the end, I am going to decide that I will not put a sentiment on here. Now, I don't normally do that, but I think once in a while it's nice to not have a card with a sentiment, because then you can just create your sentiment when you really need to use the card. So this is a recap of all of the 10 cards that I created for this particular video series. I love all of these cards. I don't have, I guess I do have some favorites, but I like them. They're all colorful. I guess for me, my favorites will be the ones with the lady holding the cupcake. I thought that she had she was a really good image to add to it. And I did have a leftover oven that I don't know what I'm going to do. And then all these papers, and then just a few more full 6x6 pieces in this pattern paper. And I'm just going to put that back in my stash. And there's only 5 left. I'm kind of signaling there. So that makes me happy, and I hope that you guys like these videos. Again, if you like these videos, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. And if you have any questions, make sure that you leave it in the comment section below. Bye guys.